I want you to use your imagination with me just for a moment. I want you to imagine that when you opened your eyes this morning, you're one of the most famous people throughout all of the United States. In fact, not just America, but the entire world. You're known for this amazing work, a work that you believe you've been given by God to take to the world. Hard work, but work that you're incredibly passionate about and you believe you are designed to do. And then you also imagine this, that as you're doing this work, you know that 3 out of every 4 people in the United States despise you for the work that you stand for. They hate you. They hate you so much that they've threatened your life. Not only have they threatened your life, but they've threatened the life of the people that you love the most, your wife, your kids, your family. Now, how would you deal with that level of pressure? How would you deal with that level of weight on your shoulders as you stand up in the morning to take one step after the other to move into this work that you really believe is rooted in the good news of the person of Jesus? I don't know how I would respond to that. I've never had that level of weight on me. Maybe I would accept it. Maybe at some point I would just let it go and disappear into the back. Do you know that in 1967 or 1968 there was a poll taken that revealed that nearly 75% of all people in the United States despised Martin Luther King, hated him for the work that he was doing? Bernice King, his daughter, said that at the time of his death, he was the most hated man in America. Think about that. Especially think about that, knowing that the work that Martin Luther King did, that we get to benefit from today as a full society, cost him his entire life, cost his family their father and their husband, cost our country one of the greatest leaders that have ever walked this planet. And so today, when you go to post something of Martin Luther King, I really hope that you take in the gravity of what he did, of the message that God breathed through him to the world, and that we start to take justice from today forward even more serious. And I would say, from my perspective as a privileged person in a privileged culture, that I would not post something lightly. And I'm going to put out a challenge to people that are in my position, which is leaders in faith communities, primarily privileged whiter communities. I would ask this: if you were a leader that was silent during Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and especially George Floyd, and you were leading a community, I would ask today that you don't post anything by Martin Luther King. Rather, I would ask this of you: would you be silent today? Would you read the words of Martin Luther King? Would you do a little research on his life? Would you listen to something by him? And then would you pray and get silent? Would you ask for forgiveness? Would you repent? And would you move forward in a new way, in a way of courage, standing for the injustices of this world? I know I'm going to spend a lot of time there today. I challenge you to do the same. I do want to end this by reading something that has always been one of my favorites. It's an excerpt from a sermon that Martin Luther King did in 1956 or 57, and it's called "The Most Durable Power." I love this sermon. There's many we could read, but I love this one. This is just a little excerpt. Take this in. He says, "Always be sure that you struggle with Christian methods and Christian weapons. Never succumb to the temptation of becoming bitter. As you press on for justice, be sure to move with dignity and discipline, using only the weapon of love. Let no man pull you so low as to hate him. Always avoid violence. If you succumb to the temptation of using violence in your struggle, unborn generations will be the recipients of a long and desolate night of bitterness, and your chief legacy to the future will be an endless reign of meaningless chaos. In your struggle for justice, let your oppressor know that you are not attempting to defeat or humiliate him or even pay him back for injustices that he has heaped upon you. Let him know that you are merely seeking justice for him as well as yourself. Let him know that the festering sore of segregation debilitates the white man as well as the black man. With this attitude, you will be able to keep your struggle on high Christian standards. Many persons will realize the urgency of seeking to eradicate the evil of segregation. There'll be many blacks who will devote their lives to the cause of freedom, and there'll be many whites of goodwill and strong moral sensitivity who will dare to take a stand for justice. Honesty impels me to admit that such a stand will require willingness to suffer and to sacrifice. So don't despair if you are condemned or persecuted for righteousness' sake. Whenever you take a stand for truth and justice, you are liable to scorn. Often, you will be called an impractical idealist or a dangerous radical. Sometimes it might mean going to jail, and if such is the case, you must honorably grace the jail with your presence. It might even mean physical death. But if physical death is a price that some must pay to free their children from a permanent life of psychological death, then nothing could be more Christian than that. I still believe that standing up for the truth of God is the greatest thing in the world. This is the end of life. The end of life is not to be happy. The end of life is not to achieve pleasure and avoid pain. The end of life is to do the will of God come what may. I still believe that love is the most durable power in the world. Over the centuries, men have sought to discover the highest good. This has been the chief quest of ethical philosophy. This was one of the big questions of Greek philosophy. The Epicureans and the Stoics sought to answer it, Plato and Aristotle. I have discovered the highest good, and it is love. This principle stands at the center of the cosmos. As John says, God is love. He who loves is a participant in the being of God, and he who hates does not know God. I think today we can hold that idea that Jesus on the cross was pure sacrificial agape love, and Martin Luther King lived a life rooted in that kind of love. Let that challenge us today. Let us inspire us to live differently and more courageous in the future.